For 3 decades, Johnny Carson sat behind that famous desk, commanding late-night television in a way no one else could. Night after night, millions tuned in seeking laughter, but Carson himself was famously hard to impress. He'd smile, he'd tease, he'd welcome stars of every stripe, yet only a rare few cracked his professional cool. Behind closed doors, he kept a secret roster of 9 guests who didn't just bring laughs. They reminded him why he fell in love with the art of performance in the first place. Tonight we step beyond the studio lights to uncover those unforgettable moments, and the people who made Johnny Carson glow. The first name on his private list is Lucille Ball, the queen of comic anarchy. When Lucy swept through the curtain, the air seemed to hum. Carson's carefully constructed routine felt almost quaint under her explosive energy. She didn't arrive to stick to a script, she arrived to tear it up. In commercial breaks, Lucy turned cables into tightropes and made the crew the unwitting stars of her pantomimes. On air, she pivoted from a behind-the-scenes disaster story into a physical bit so audacious that Carson's next question evaporated on his tongue. He didn't mind. Watching Lucy was like watching lightning, chaotic, dangerous, and thrilling all at once. But beneath the wild humor was genuine care. She learned everyone's name, signed autographs on napkins for interns, praised the lighting tech for making a redhead look human. In those moments, Carson saw more than a comedic force of nature. He saw a generous spirit who honored every person in the room. And when she left the stage, he'd grin like a kid who had just discovered laughter for the first time. Next, Bob Hope. If Lucy was an untamed storm, Hope was a perfectly honed dart, each one-liner hitting the mark with unerring precision. Carnival jokes, politics, golf. Carson would lob a setup and Hope would counter with the kind of punchline he'd tested 1,000 times in Vegas showrooms and USO tours. It wasn't about surprise, it was about craft. Hope treated Carson's desk as an old sparring ring, trading verbal jabs that felt friendly yet razor-sharp. When they weren't on air, Hope arrived early to swap golf stories with Ed McMahon and high-five the prop guys. Carson admired that old-school professionalism. No entitlement, only the confidence that comes from decades of refining your act until it gleams. On camera, their banter sounded effortless. Backstage, their respect for each other was as clear as the studio lights. Then there was Jack Benny, master of the pregnant pause. Benny didn't burst onto the set. He drifted in, taking all the room his presence demanded. Carson, ever the clockwork comedian, watched in awe as Benny used silence like an instrument. A slight eyebrow lift, a drawn-out well, and the audience would lean forward so far you could hear the anticipation. When the punchline finally landed, it hit like a tidal wave. Backstage, Benny's precision reigned. He might ask the stagehand to lower a stool by an inch, purely to sharpen the rhythm. Carson sometimes confessed to friends that he stole from Benny's playbook. Learn to respect the space where people laugh and you own the room without shouting. Which moment of perfect comedic silence sticks with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. Carson's admiration for musical artistry led him to Ella Fitzgerald, whose entrance could hush Studio One. No grand gestures, just a nod to the band, a quick smile at Carson, and that first note pure and effortless. Ella didn't dazzle with tricks. She told stories in melody, every phrase brimming with intention. When she scat, the orchestra answered her like lifelong friends finishing her sentences. Carson, the consummate observer, became a listener. He didn't crack jokes, he soaked in every nuance. Backstage, Ella's humility shone. She thanked the mic engineer for a clean mix and asked the makeup artist about her day. In an industry stuffed with egos, Ella's kindness felt like a superpower. For Carson, she taught that virtuosity could be gentle, that greatness doesn't have to bulldoze the room, it can welcome you in. Then came the irrepressible Dean Martin, loose tie and sinuous grin in place. As Dean slouched into the guest chair, the show's structure melted away. He interrupted Johnny mid-question with a half-sung lyric, teased Ed McMahon so hard the band stumbled over their entrance, and Carson surrendered to the chaos, laughing like it was just 2 buddies in a bar. Dean turned rambling tales into acts of charm, proving that confidence lets you flirt with disaster and still land on your feet. Off-camera, he was the same rogue, winking at the crew, toasting the floor manager with an imaginary martini, tossing compliments like confetti. Carson adored that mischievous generosity. Dean Martin didn't just play the audience. He made everyone on set feel like part of the party. Jimmy Stewart arrived carrying something utterly different: sincerity. No showbiz bravado, just a gentle stoop of the shoulders and stories that unfolded at their own pace. Stewart's anecdotes, from small-town memories to heartfelt wartime poems, often stopped Carson in his tracks. One night, Jimmy read a poem about his dog and Carson's eyes welled on live television. That unguarded moment became legend. Backstage, Stewart treated every crew member as an old friend, remembering names, asking after families. In those quiet acts of warmth, Carson found a reminder that celebrity meant nothing without compassion. Jimmy Stewart didn't just entertain. He reminded Carson of the steady, true heart beneath the glitz. George Burns carried his comedy like a well-worn coat, casually elegant with a cigar lit at the lip. When Burns stepped on set, the energy didn't spike. It settled to a comfortable warmth. He placed jokes like polished gems, each pause calibrated so the laugh arrived exactly when it should. Burns didn't vie for attention. He commanded it by honoring the audience. Backstage, he greeted guards and prop masters with equal respect, sharing whispered quips that felt like private gifts. Carson watched and learned. The mark of a great performer is not how loud you can shout, but how graciously you can shake a hand. Then the electrifying Sammy Davis Jr., who exploded onto the stage with a whirlwind of impressions and dance steps. He hugged the camera crew, playfully teased the band leader, and within seconds had everyone, including Carson, riding his infectious high. Yet for all that dazzle, Sammy never overshadowed the room. He treated late night like one big celebration, inviting every person there to share in the joy. Backstage, he'd teach interns a quick tap routine, balance a hat on his nose to calm nerves, or hold court with a makeup artist, making them feel like part of his world. Carson admired that rare combination of superstar talent and genuine warmth. With Sammy, the show wasn't a broadcast, it was a party. Finally, Betty White. Sharp as a tack and warm as sunshine, Betty matched Johnny Carson line for line. She never tried to upstage him. She met him on his own turf and nudged him forward. One sly comeback here, a perfectly timed turn on a harmless anecdote there, and the audience roared every time. Off camera, Betty stuck around to thank the camera operators, joke with interns about their ties, and ask stagehands about their pets. When a sound tech mentioned his ailing dog, she remembered and asked about it on her next visit. That habit of seeing every person, treating them like friends. Carson valued it more than any ratings number. With Betty White, the show didn't just glow. It felt like home. When you strip away the cue cards and the applause signs, Johnny Carson's private roster shares a single truth. He loved craft and character above all. Lucille Ball taught him that controlled chaos could be joyous. Bob Hope showed him the power of razor-sharp writing. Jack Benny proved silence can speak louder than any joke. Ella Fitzgerald reminded him that virtuosity need not overpower humility. Dean Martin let him relax into genuine mischief. Jimmy Stewart brought him back to sincerity. George Burns polished comedy with courtesy. Sammy Davis Jr. fused star power with kindness. And Betty White balanced wit with boundless warmth. These 9 didn't just make Johnny Carson laugh, they made him feel. They reminded him that the heart of television isn't the host's desk, but the shared moment between performer and audience, where timing, generosity, and authenticity win every time. Now it's your turn. Which of these legends would you have booked every week? What's the one clip you'd show someone who's never seen them with Carson? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think.